Nadie lo esperaba. La ley del pueblo obligó al ranchero a casarse con las tres hermanas. His ranch was not just a piece of land. It was a home, a responsibility, and a legacy. From a young age, Ernesto had learned to care for the animals, fix fences, and work the soil. His hands were strong, and his back was used to hard work, yet there was a calmness in his eyes, a quiet pride in the way he moved through his land. People in the village often saw him walking along the paths between the pastures, greeting his animals, and inspecting the crops with careful attention. He was known for his dedication and discipline, and over the years, his farm had grown into one of the most respected in the region. Ernesto lived alone, and for most of the villagers, this was a source of curiosity. Many wondered why a man so capable, so successful, remained unmarried. Some whispered that he was too stubborn, others said he preferred the company of his animals to people. But Ernesto never paid much attention to the gossip. His life had always been simple, and he found happiness in routines that others might find dull. Each morning he woke before dawn, milked the cows, fed the horses, and checked on the fields. He enjoyed the quiet of the early hours when the world was still asleep and the air smelled fresh with dew. In the evenings, he would sit on the porch, watch the sunset, and listen to the sounds of the land. For Ernesto, these moments were enough. Despite his satisfaction with solitude, there was sometimes a hint of loneliness. He saw families in the village celebrating together, children running through the streets, and neighbors sharing meals. He felt a small longing, not a desperate need, but a curiosity about what life might be like with companionship. Yet, he never sought it actively. Life on the ranch was demanding, and he believed that love, if it came, should come naturally. He spent his days tending to the land, repairing the fences, and maintaining the old house that had belonged to his family for generations. Each corner of the ranch held memories of his father teaching him to ride a horse, of his mother showing him how to care for the animals, and of quiet evenings filled with laughter and storytelling. Ernesto's neighbors respected him deeply. They admired his honesty, his hard work, and his reliability. If there was ever a problem in the village, people knew they could count on Ernesto. Whether it was helping a neighbor fix a broken roof, rescuing a lost animal, or lending a hand during harvest, he was always there. Yet they also noticed his solitary nature. Children would sometimes peek at him curiously, wondering why he didn't have a wife or family. Adults, too, would ask politely or in jest, "When will you find someone, Ernesto?" He would smile, shrug, and continue with his work, never offering a detailed explanation. To him, there was no rush. Life on the ranch had its own rhythm, and he felt no pressure to follow the expectations of the village. One of Ernesto's favorite parts of the day was tending to the garden. He had a small patch of land near the house where he grew vegetables, herbs, and flowers. The garden was colorful and fragrant, and it gave him a sense of peace. He would spend hours planting seeds, watering the soil, and watching the plants grow. Sometimes he would talk to them quietly, as if the plants could understand him. "Grow strong," he would say, "and help feed us through the seasons." It was a simple ritual, but it brought him joy. Visitors to the ranch often commented on how vibrant and beautiful the garden was, yet Ernesto never took credit. He believed it was the care and patience that mattered, not the praise. Animals were, perhaps, Ernesto's closest companions. He knew each cow, horse, and chicken by name. He could tell when a cow was sick, when a horse was restless, or when a chicken was frightened. He treated them with respect, understanding that they depended on him just as he depended on them. Mornings often began with a careful inspection of the animals, feeding them, and ensuring they had clean water and proper shelter. He took pride in his livestock, knowing that healthy, happy animals meant a successful ranch. Over the years, people from other villages would visit to learn from him, seeking advice on caring for their own animals. Ernesto shared his knowledge freely, enjoying the opportunity to teach and guide others. Although Ernesto enjoyed his solitary life, he sometimes found himself observing the villagers with a mixture of curiosity and longing. Weddings, festivals, and market days revealed a world he had not fully participated in. He would watch children run in circles during celebrations, couples dancing together, and families laughing over shared meals. While he did not feel regret, he sometimes wondered about the experience of love and family, of having someone to share both hardships and joys with. He understood that his dedication to the ranch had kept him focused on survival and growth, leaving little room for personal connections. Still, he felt a quiet hope that one day, life might offer a new chapter. The villagers had noticed his routine, his reliability, and his dedication, and many admired him secretly. Yet, no one knew what Ernesto thought about marriage or companionship. He had no complaints, no resentment, only a quiet acceptance of life as it was. The ranch was more than work. It was a reflection of his character, a symbol of his independence and resilience. He understood that life could be unpredictable, that circumstances might change, but for now, he found contentment in the familiarity of his daily routine. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the edge of his property, Ernesto noticed a group of villagers walking toward him. They had an unusual seriousness in their expressions, and he sensed that something important was about to happen. The village council had gathered, and their presence made him curious. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and approached them cautiously. "What brings you here?" he asked politely. They exchanged glances and began explaining a matter that would soon change his life completely. A law from the past that required unmarried ranchers with significant land to marry daughters from a particular family. Ernesto listened quietly, processing the news with a mixture of surprise, disbelief, and cautious curiosity. At first, Ernesto could hardly believe what he was hearing. The law seemed outdated and almost unbelievable, yet it was officially recognized by the village. As the villagers explained the details, Ernesto realized that he was now at the center of a situation that would challenge everything he had known. He would have to marry not just one woman but three sisters, Marta, Lucia, and Rosa Flores. Each sister had her own personality, her own dreams, and her own expectations. The thought of such a sudden, dramatic change was overwhelming, yet there was no way to ignore it. Ernesto felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. How would he adjust to this new reality? Could he continue to run the ranch while forming relationships with three different women? That evening, Ernesto sat alone on his porch, watching the sunset and reflecting on his life. The gentle wind carried the scents of the fields and the garden, calming his thoughts. He knew that the coming days would be filled with challenges and surprises, but he also recognized that life often demanded adaptability. His heart was calm, but his mind was active, imagining the possibilities and difficulties ahead. The ranch, his animals, and the land he loved would remain constants, but the relationships he was about to form would bring new dimensions to his world. For the first time in many years, Ernesto felt the quiet stirrings of anticipation, not for wealth or success, but for connection, understanding, and perhaps even affection. As night fell, Ernesto closed his eyes, thinking about the future with both caution and hope. He had spent a lifetime building a life of discipline, hard work, and independence. Yet now, the story of his life was about to take an unexpected turn. He understood that change was inevitable, and that the law of the village had brought him to a point where he could no longer rely solely on solitude. He would meet the sisters soon, navigate new relationships, and find ways to balance the demands of the ranch with the complexities of family life. Deep down, Ernesto felt ready to embrace this new chapter with patience, respect, and the quiet strength that had guided him all his life. And so, the stage was set. Don Ernesto, the solitary rancher, would soon step into a life that no one, not even he, had imagined. A life filled with unexpected companionship, challenges, and perhaps even joy. The fields, the animals, and the gentle rhythms of the ranch would continue. But now, alongside them, new voices, new personalities, and new connections would shape his days. The story of Don Ernesto was only beginning, and the journey promised to be as remarkable and unique as the man himself. The morning after the villagers had delivered the unexpected news, Don Ernesto woke with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The idea of marrying 3 sisters seemed impossible, almost like a story from another time. Yet, the law was real, and the village council had explained it clearly. According to the old tradition, any rancher who owned significant land and had remained unmarried past a certain age was required to take wives from a family chosen by the council. In Ernesto's case, it was the Flores family, known throughout the region for their beauty, intelligence, and strong character. The council had not chosen arbitrarily. The Flores sisters were respected, talented, and capable, qualities that they believed would complement Ernesto's life as a rancher. As he tended to his animals that morning, Ernesto could not help but think of what meeting the sisters would be like. He had always preferred solitude, and yet now, he was expected to form relationships with 3 different women simultaneously. How would they react? Would they resent the law as much as he did? Could they live together harmoniously under one roof with him at the center? His mind swirled with questions, and for the first time in his life, Ernesto felt a genuine anxiety about the future. By mid-morning, a messenger from the Flores household arrived. The sisters had been informed of the law and were awaiting Ernesto's visit. He walked toward their home, a short distance from the edge of his property, trying to steady his thoughts. The house was well kept, with colorful flowers along the porch and the smell of fresh bread baking inside. Ernesto noticed the details, as he always did, appreciating the care and effort that went into maintaining the home. His knock on the door echoed softly, and a moment later, a young woman opened it. She introduced herself as Marta, the eldest of the sisters. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and a little wary, reflecting a combination of curiosity and caution. Marta greeted Ernesto politely but without warmth. She had heard about him, everyone in the village had, but seeing him in person was different. He appeared calm and collected, with a quiet confidence that immediately suggested he was capable, reliable, and thoughtful. "So you are Don Ernesto," she said, her voice steady, betraying only a hint of nervousness. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, and replied, "Yes, and you must be Marta. It is a pleasure to meet you." The formal exchange seemed strange, almost ceremonial, yet it was the first step in a process that neither of them fully understood. Soon after, the other 2 sisters, Lucia and Rosa, arrived. Lucia, the middle sister, was gentle, with a kind expression that suggested patience and thoughtfulness. Rosa, the youngest, was lively and full of energy, her bright eyes sparkling with curiosity and mischief. Each sister carried her own personality, her own expectations, and her own sense of individuality. They stood together in the parlor, exchanging glances, while Ernesto greeted them one by one. The room was filled with a quiet tension, an unspoken understanding that the law had brought them together, but their personal feelings had yet to find a place. The initial conversation was cautious. Marta asked questions about the ranch, the animals, and Ernesto's daily life. Lucia inquired about his family history and the traditions of the land. Rosa, always curious, asked about the work he enjoyed most and the routines he followed. Ernesto answered each question with honesty, careful to show respect and attentiveness. He could sense the subtle differences in their personalities, the independence of Marta, the sweetness of Lucia, and the energy of Rosa, and he understood that forming a connection would require patience, understanding, and sensitivity. After the introductions, They walked outside to see the ranch. Ernesto wanted the sisters to understand the life he led, the responsibilities he carried, and the environment in which they would soon be living. He showed them the pastures, the stables, and the garden, explaining the work required for each. The sisters listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and occasionally exchanging glances. Marta seemed particularly focused, evaluating the practicality of life on the ranch. Lucia appeared contemplative, absorbing the details with care. Rosa, as usual, moved energetically, exploring the surroundings with curiosity and excitement. Ernesto noticed their reactions and felt a mix of relief and nervousness. It was clear that forming harmony would be a challenge, but he also saw potential. Over the following days, Ernesto spent time visiting the sisters and learning more about them. Each meeting revealed new aspects of their personalities. Marta was responsible and organized, with a natural ability to manage tasks efficiently. She had a sharp mind and a strong sense of justice, traits that Ernesto found admirable and occasionally intimidating. Lucia was empathetic, nurturing, and reflective. Her calm demeanor made it easy to talk with her, and she seemed to understand unspoken emotions, offering kindness and patience where it was needed. Rosa was vibrant, curious, and playful. She brought energy and lightness to the group, often causing everyone to laugh with her spontaneous actions and witty remarks. As the sisters observed Ernesto's life, they began to appreciate his dedication and character. He was honest, hardworking, and remarkably patient. The way he cared for his animals, maintained the land, and respected traditions spoke volumes about his values. They realized that, although the law had brought them together unexpectedly, Ernesto was a man worthy of respect and consideration. Each sister experienced a mix of feelings, apprehension, curiosity, and a growing sense of admiration. They could see that life with him would not be easy, but it might be rewarding. Despite these early signs of compatibility, challenges soon emerged. The sisters had different expectations and desires, and Ernesto had to learn how to balance their needs with his own responsibilities. Marta, being assertive, sometimes clashed with his decisions. Lucia's gentle nature made her hesitant to voice disagreements, which required Ernesto to pay close attention to subtle cues. Rosa's energetic personality occasionally caused disruptions, and he had to find ways to redirect her enthusiasm without discouraging her spirit. Each day brought new lessons in communication, compromise, and understanding. Ernesto realized that forming a harmonious household would require more than compliance with the law. It demanded emotional intelligence, empathy, and a willingness to grow together. The village watched with fascination as the process unfolded. News of Ernesto's meetings with the sisters spread quickly, and neighbors speculated about how the unusual situation would develop. Some offered advice, while others simply observed, curious to see how the family would adapt. Ernesto, however, focused on the immediate task at hand, learning to understand and respect each sister while maintaining his responsibilities on the ranch. He knew that the opinions of others mattered less than the trust and cooperation he could build with Marta, Lucia, and Rosa. Evenings became moments of reflection for Ernesto. He would sit on the porch after a long day, thinking about the sisters, the law, and the changes in his life. The sun would dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the fields, and he would feel both the weight of responsibility and the excitement of new possibilities. He began to imagine what life might be like once the sisters moved into the ranch, shared meals, laughter, discussions about daily chores, and the creation of new routines. The future was uncertain, yet the challenge was also an opportunity to grow in ways he had never experienced. Over time, the sisters also reflected on their own feelings. They had been thrust into a situation beyond their control, yet they could see the goodness in Ernesto. Marta admired his discipline and sense of duty. Lucia appreciated his kindness and integrity. Rosa enjoyed his humor and warmth. Each sister began to envision how they could contribute to a household built on respect, cooperation, and shared values. While the path ahead was still unclear, the initial interactions had laid a foundation of mutual recognition and cautious trust. By the end of this early period, Ernesto and the sisters had begun to understand one another in small but meaningful ways. The law had brought them together, but their personalities, experiences, and values would determine whether they could form a harmonious household. There were moments of tension and moments of joy, but each experience offered lessons in patience, empathy, and compromise. Ernesto realized that the true work was not only in managing the ranch, but also in navigating the complexities of human relationships. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter of their lives. The law had created the circumstances, but the choices, attitudes, and efforts of Ernesto and the sisters would shape the reality. Each day brought new experiences, new conversations, and new opportunities to build understanding and trust. The journey would be challenging, but it also held the promise of connection, companionship, and perhaps even happiness. Don Ernesto, the solitary rancher, was no longer entirely alone. The Flores sisters, with their distinct personalities and strengths, were entering his world, and together they would begin the delicate task of creating a life that balanced tradition, law, and personal harmony. The first day that the Flores sisters arrived at Don Ernesto's ranch was filled with nervous energy and quiet curiosity. The sisters had packed their belongings carefully, each bringing items that reflected her personality. Marta carried books and papers, symbols of her practicality and focus. Lucia brought soft linens and flowers, items that reflected her nurturing and thoughtful nature. Rosa, as always, arrived with bright scarves and playful trinkets, items that added color and life to the home. Ernesto watched as they stepped onto the porch, feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He knew that this day marked the beginning of a life that would be very different from the solitude he had always known. The morning air was crisp, and the sun illuminated the ranch in a golden glow. Ernesto guided the sisters through the main house, explaining the layout and showing them where they would each have space for their belongings. The house had been built years ago, sturdy and practical, with large rooms that could accommodate multiple people comfortably. There was a dining area where meals could be shared, a spacious kitchen, and rooms for each sister to retreat to when they needed privacy. Ernesto tried to anticipate questions and make the sisters feel welcome, even as he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Marta was the first to explore her room. She opened the windows and looked out over the pastures, taking in the sight of grazing cows and the distant hills. She appreciated the order and cleanliness of the space, noting small details such as the sturdy furniture and the simple elegance of the decor. Lucia moved slowly through her room, touching the soft linens and arranging her flowers on a small table. She felt a sense of calm, imagining how she could make the room feel like home. Rosa, meanwhile, bounced from room to room, her energy infectious. She opened drawers, peeked under beds, and laughed at the simple surprises she found in the old house. Ernesto could not help but smile at her enthusiasm, even though he worried about how the energy of one person could affect the harmony of the household. Breakfast was a quiet affair, filled with tentative conversation. Ernesto prepared eggs, fresh bread, and hot tea, serving the sisters with careful attention. Marta asked about the schedule of the day, wanting to understand the routines she would be part of. Lucia inquired about the tasks needed in the kitchen and the garden, showing interest in helping where she could. Rosa asked playful questions, sometimes interrupting the others with laughter, but also showing curiosity about everything from the animals to the tools in the barn. Ernesto answered each question patiently, aware that their first day together would set the tone for the days and months to come. After breakfast, Ernesto led the sisters outside to the fields and stables. He explained the work required for each task, from feeding the animals to repairing fences and planting crops. Marta listened intently, taking notes in her mind, and occasionally asking practical questions about schedules and responsibilities. Lucia observed the animals with a gentle touch, quietly assisting Ernesto as he distributed feed. Rosa ran among the pastures, marveling at the size of the ranch and the energy of the animals, occasionally offering suggestions that made Ernesto laugh. The work was tiring, yet it provided an opportunity for the sisters to see firsthand the life they were entering and for Ernesto to observe their personalities in action. As the day progressed, small challenges began to appear. Marta wanted to organize the tasks methodically, sometimes clashing with Ernesto's more instinctive approach. Lucia hesitated when she saw a cow acting strangely, unsure whether to intervene or wait for guidance. Rosa, full of energy, occasionally disrupted routines, forgetting instructions and causing minor confusion. Ernesto realized that patience, clear communication, and gentle guidance would be essential for maintaining balance in the household. He reminded himself that each sister had unique strengths, and over time, these differences could become a source of support rather than conflict. The first evening was a time of reflection and quiet bonding. After a long day of work, the family gathered in the kitchen, sharing a simple meal. Ernesto observed the sisters as they interacted, noting how Marta took initiative in helping with the dishes, how Lucia offered kind words and support, and how Rosa injected humor into the conversation. Despite the differences in their personalities, there was a sense of curiosity and tentative trust growing among them. Ernesto realized that the law might have brought them together, but their efforts and willingness to cooperate would determine the success of their shared life. Nights on the ranch brought a peaceful rhythm. The sounds of animals settling in for the night, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the distant call of an owl created a serene backdrop for reflection. Ernesto often sat on the porch after the sisters had retired to their rooms, thinking about the day. He acknowledged the challenges ahead but also felt a quiet optimism. The sisters had shown adaptability, curiosity, and a willingness to learn. Each of them had qualities that could contribute to the household in meaningful ways. He understood that forming a harmonious family would take time, patience, and effort from all parties involved. Over the next few weeks, routines began to form. Marta took on organizational tasks, ensuring that chores were divided fairly and that schedules were clear. Lucia contributed by helping with meals, maintaining the home, and providing quiet emotional support. Rosa's energy and creativity added joy to daily life, often turning mundane tasks into moments of laughter and connection. Ernesto learned to balance his own work with the needs of the sisters, finding ways to guide and support them without imposing rigid control. The household slowly transformed from a collection of individuals into a functioning family unit, each member contributing in their own way. Conflicts still arose, as they inevitably do in any household. Marta's desire for order sometimes clashed with Rosa's spontaneous behavior. Lucia occasionally felt overlooked when the others' personalities dominated discussions. Ernesto found himself mediating disagreements, encouraging compromise, and teaching the sisters to communicate openly. He discovered that leadership was not about authority alone, but about listening, understanding, and guiding with patience. Each challenge was an opportunity for growth, not only for the sisters but for Ernesto himself. In addition to household routines, the sisters began to integrate into the life of the ranch more actively. They learned to feed the animals, plant crops, and repair fences. Marta approached tasks with efficiency and precision, often suggesting improvements to routines. Lucia offered care and attention to the animals, noticing subtle signs of illness or discomfort. Rosa approached work with creativity and enthusiasm, sometimes finding playful solutions to practical problems. Ernesto observed their progress with pride, recognizing that their contributions were essential to the success of the ranch and the harmony of their shared life. Evening conversations became a cherished part of their routine. The family would gather in the main room, sharing stories of the day, discussing challenges, and offering advice. Marta often spoke of her observations and practical suggestions. Lucia shared her reflections and feelings, offering comfort and encouragement. Rosa added humor and lightness, reminding everyone not to take life too seriously. Ernesto guided the discussions, listening attentively, mediating differences, and reinforcing the importance of mutual respect and understanding. Over time, these conversations strengthened their bond, helping them navigate the complexities of their new life together. As the weeks turned into months, the initial awkwardness of their arrangement began to fade. The sisters discovered a rhythm in their interactions, learning to anticipate each other's needs and respect boundaries. Marta learned to appreciate Rosa's creativity, recognizing that spontaneity could complement careful planning. Lucia found her voice, expressing her thoughts and feelings more confidently. Rosa began to understand the importance of balance and moderation, while still maintaining her joyful spirit. Ernesto, too, adapted, learning to guide and support the sisters without losing his own sense of self. Through this period of adjustment, a sense of mutual respect and trust developed. The law had forced their initial meeting, but their efforts, patience, and willingness to understand one another created the foundation for a meaningful life together. Each member of the household contributed their unique strengths, and slowly, the ranch transformed into a home filled with cooperation, shared responsibility, and moments of genuine connection. Ernesto realized that while life had changed dramatically, it had also become richer and more rewarding. By the end of this stage, Ernesto and the sisters had achieved a delicate balance. They were not a perfect family, but they were learning, adapting, and growing together. The initial shock of the law had faded, replaced by curiosity, respect, and a tentative sense of belonging. Life on the ranch was no longer solitary for Ernesto, and the sisters had found a space where they could contribute, express themselves, and build relationships. The future remained uncertain, but the first steps toward harmony and understanding had been taken, laying the groundwork for the challenges and joys that lay ahead. And so, life continued on the ranch. The days were long, the work was hard, and the challenges were real, but within the routines, conversations, and shared responsibilities, a new family was forming. Don Ernesto, Marta, Lucia, and Rosa were learning to live together, to support each other, and to find joy in a life they had never imagined. The law had brought them together, but their willingness to understand and respect one another was what would truly define their future. Life on Don Ernesto's ranch had settled into a rhythm, but it was not without its challenges. As the days passed, the sisters and Ernesto grew more comfortable with each other, yet the reality of sharing a home and responsibilities was constantly present. Each sister had her own personality, her own habits, and her own expectations, and Ernesto had to navigate these differences carefully. While they had begun to find a balance, the deeper challenges of living together, making decisions as a household, and maintaining the ranch's productivity required patience, understanding, and compromise from all of them. The first challenge came during harvest season. The ranch had more crops than ever, and the workload was heavier than usual. Ernesto was used to managing the work alone, knowing exactly what needed to be done and how to do it efficiently. Now, he had to delegate tasks among the sisters, balancing their strengths and weaknesses, while ensuring that the work was completed on time. Marta, with her organizational skills, created a schedule and assigned duties, but sometimes her strict approach caused tension with Rosa, who preferred to work freely and creatively. Lucia often found herself in the middle, trying to smooth over disagreements and encourage cooperation. Ernesto realized that his role had shifted from worker to mediator, requiring both leadership and empathy. One morning, a disagreement arose over the planting of new crops. Marta wanted to follow a detailed plan, based on careful calculations of soil, weather, and past yields. Rosa suggested a different approach, experimenting with new seeds in a small area to see how they would grow. Lucia, as usual, tried to find a compromise, proposing a mix of both methods. Ernesto listened patiently, considering the merits of each approach. He realized that while Marta's plan was safe and reliable, Rosa's idea could bring innovation and potential improvement. After discussion, they agreed to allocate part of the land for experimentation while following Marta's plan for the main crops. The decision pleased everyone and demonstrated the value of combining experience with creativity. As the weeks passed, Ernesto noticed subtle changes in the household. Marta, initially focused only on efficiency, began to appreciate Rosa's enthusiasm and the joy it brought to their daily routines. Rosa, in turn, learned to respect Marta's careful planning and realized that structure could coexist with creativity. Lucia, always gentle, gained confidence in expressing her thoughts and suggestions, finding that her voice was valued by both her sisters and Ernesto. These small shifts in attitude and understanding were the foundation for deeper harmony within the family. The animals also required constant attention, and this brought both joy and challenges. One day, a cow became sick, and Ernesto had to guide the sisters through the care process. Marta remained calm and methodical, following instructions precisely. Lucia comforted the animal, speaking softly and ensuring it felt safe. Rosa, though worried, offered ideas and assistance, her energy helping to maintain morale during a stressful situation. Together, they nursed the cow back to health, an experience that strengthened their bonds and reminded them that cooperation was essential for the success of the ranch. Outside the routine of work, the sisters began to form friendships with each other, and with Ernesto that went beyond obligation. Marta and Rosa discovered shared interests in cooking and experimenting with new recipes, often spending hours in the kitchen together, while Lucia quietly observed and contributed her thoughtful touches. Ernesto joined in when he could, offering suggestions, tasting their creations, and appreciating their efforts. Over time, these shared experiences created moments of laughter and connection, breaking down the barriers that had existed when they first arrived. The village also played a role in shaping their experience. Neighbors were curious, sometimes skeptical about the unusual arrangement, but they gradually came to respect the family's dedication and hard work. Children from nearby homes would visit, fascinated by the ranch and the animals, while adults occasionally offered advice or assistance. Ernesto encouraged these interactions, recognizing that connection with the community would help the sisters feel more comfortable and supported. Marta, Lucia, and Rosa each found ways to contribute, whether by teaching children to garden, sharing baked goods, or helping neighbors with small tasks. These experiences broadened their understanding of life beyond the ranch and deepened their sense of belonging. Evenings became a time for reflection and conversation. After long days of work, the family would gather in the main room, sharing stories, discussing plans, and sometimes debating ideas. Marta often led practical discussions, focusing on efficiency and schedules. Lucia contributed empathy and understanding, helping to mediate conflicts and ensure everyone's feelings were considered. Rosa added lightness and humor, reminding the family not to take challenges too seriously and encouraging moments of joy even during hard work. Ernesto listened, guided, and learned alongside them, realizing that leadership was as much about listening and understanding as it was about making decisions. Despite their growing harmony, the family still faced unexpected difficulties. One stormy night, heavy rain threatened the crops, and the river near the ranch began to swell. Ernesto, Marta, Lucia, and Rosa worked together tirelessly, reinforcing barriers, moving animals to safety, and ensuring the land was protected as best as they could. The sisters' willingness to face danger alongside Ernesto strengthened their trust in him and in each other. By the time the storm passed, the family had endured a shared trial that deepened their bond and reminded them of the importance of unity and cooperation. In addition to physical challenges, there were emotional ones. Each sister had moments of doubt, fear, and homesickness. Marta sometimes questioned whether she could balance her responsibilities with the expectations placed upon her. Lucia occasionally felt overlooked, worrying that her gentle nature made her contributions invisible. Rosa, despite her energy, struggled with feelings of insecurity and the desire for independence. Ernesto, aware of these emotional needs, made a conscious effort to provide support, listening attentively, offering reassurance, and finding small ways to celebrate each sister's unique strengths. Over time, these gestures created a foundation of emotional security that allowed the family to grow stronger together. As months passed, the household developed routines that balanced work, rest, and connection. Mornings began with feeding the animals, checking the crops, and preparing breakfast together. Afternoons were filled with labor in the fields, repairs around the ranch, and small projects to improve the home. Evenings became times for conversation, games, and reflection. The sisters learned to respect each other's space, support one another's efforts, and collaborate effectively. Ernesto, once solitary, now found joy in guiding, mentoring, and sharing life with the sisters. The challenges they faced together created resilience, trust, and a sense of shared purpose. The relationship between Ernesto and the sisters gradually evolved beyond formal courtesy. Marta began to trust his judgment and seek his advice on practical matters. Lucia found comfort in confiding her thoughts and feelings, knowing Ernesto would listen without judgment. Rosa, energetic and playful, developed a deep respect for his wisdom and experience, while still maintaining her joyful personality. The sisters also learned from each other, discovering that cooperation, compromise, and mutual support were essential for both daily life and long-term happiness. One particularly memorable day involved the preparation for the village festival. The sisters, each contributing their own skills, worked with Ernesto to organize decorations, prepare food, and coordinate events. Marta focused on planning and logistics, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Lucia offered creativity and attention to detail, making sure every aspect was thoughtful and welcoming. Rosa brought energy and enthusiasm, inspiring others and keeping the atmosphere lively. Together with Ernesto's guidance, they created a successful celebration that impressed the village and strengthened their confidence in working as a team. Through these shared experiences, the family learned important lessons about patience, respect, and the value of teamwork. They discovered that while individual strengths were important, the ability to listen, adapt, and support one another was what truly made them strong. Each challenge, whether physical, emotional, or social, became an opportunity to deepen their connections and develop resilience. Ernesto realized that the law which had initially forced them together had, in a way, opened the door to growth, understanding, and the creation of a family built on mutual respect and shared effort. By the end of this period, Don Ernesto and the Flores sisters had moved beyond the initial shock and uncertainty. They had faced storms, disagreements, and personal doubts, yet each experience had strengthened their bonds. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It had become a home filled with laughter, shared responsibility, and moments of connection. The family was not perfect, but they had learned to support, respect, and value each other. Life on the ranch was demanding, yet it was also rich with lessons, relationships, and unexpected joys. And so, the family's life continued, grounded in hard work, patience, and growing affection. The challenges they faced had tested them, yet they had emerged stronger and closer than ever. Don Ernesto, Marta, Lucia, and Rosa had not only adapted to their unusual circumstances, but had also discovered the strength of unity, the importance of empathy, and the potential for joy even in the most unexpected situations. The story of their shared life was unfolding, with each day bringing new experiences, growth, and the promise of deeper connection. With months of shared life behind them, Don Ernesto and the Flores sisters had transformed their household from a place of uncertainty into a home of cooperation, understanding, and warmth. The early days of tension and awkwardness had given way to laughter, teamwork, and genuine companionship. Each member of the family had discovered their strengths and learned to support one another in ways that created balance and harmony. The ranch was no longer just a place of labor. It had become a home filled with stories, shared victories, and lessons learned through experience. The sisters had grown comfortable in their roles, each contributing in her own unique way. Marta, the eldest, had embraced leadership with wisdom and patience. She organized tasks, created schedules, and helped Ernesto plan the daily work while maintaining fairness and clarity. Over time, she also learned to soften her approach, appreciating Rose's spontaneity and the warmth that Lucia brought to the home. Marta's careful planning became a backbone for the family, ensuring that the ranch ran efficiently while also allowing space for personal growth and connection. Lucia, the middle sister, had found her confidence and voice. Her nurturing nature extended beyond her interactions with the sisters and Ernesto, reaching the animals and the surrounding community. She became a bridge between different perspectives, mediating conflicts with compassion and offering quiet encouragement when tensions arose. Lucia's presence brought a sense of calm and understanding to the household, reminding everyone that patience and empathy were as valuable as skill and strength. Over time, her gentle influence helped the sisters respect one another and work together more effectively. Rosa, the youngest, brought energy, creativity, and joy to the household. Her playful spirit lifted everyone's mood during long days of work, and her curiosity often led to innovative solutions for everyday challenges. Rosa's lightheartedness reminded the family not to take life too seriously, and her enthusiasm encouraged exploration and learning. Though her energy sometimes caused minor disruptions, the sisters and Ernesto learned to embrace her creativity, finding that her approach often led to new insights and opportunities for growth. Ernesto himself had changed in ways he could not have anticipated. The solitary rancher who had once found comfort in routine and isolation had discovered the richness of shared life. He had learned patience, empathy, and emotional intelligence, realizing that leadership required more than guiding work. It required understanding hearts, listening to concerns, and fostering trust. The relationships he had built with the sisters were no longer defined by obligation, but by mutual respect, shared experiences, and a genuine desire to see each other thrive. The family's relationship extended beyond the ranch into the village, where they had become a symbol of unity and collaboration. Initially, neighbors were skeptical about the unusual arrangement, but over time, they came to admire the dedication, cooperation, and resilience of Ernesto and the sisters. Children visited to learn about the animals and gardening, and neighbors often sought advice or shared meals together. The family's involvement in the community created a sense of belonging for the sisters, helping them feel integrated and respected. Marta, Lucia, and Rosa each found ways to contribute, whether through teaching, helping with local projects, or sharing their talents, strengthening the bond between the ranch and the village. Life on the ranch was still demanding. Seasons changed, crops had to be planted and harvested, and animals required constant care. Yet the family approached these tasks with a sense of shared purpose and joy. Mornings began with tending the animals, feeding them, and preparing for the day's work. Afternoons were spent in the fields, repairing fences, or improving the home. Evenings became moments of reflection, conversation, and laughter. The sisters had learned to respect each other's space, communicate effectively, and offer support without resentment. Ernesto found that the challenges of ranch life were more manageable and even enjoyable when approached together. The family also faced unexpected events that tested their resilience. One spring, a sudden drought threatened the crops, and the family had to work tirelessly to irrigate the fields and save their harvest. They experimented with water conservation techniques, improvised irrigation channels, and worked day and night to protect their plants. Marta's planning, Lucia's careful attention, Rosa's creativity, and Ernesto's experience all combined to navigate the crisis successfully. This shared effort strengthened their bond, demonstrating the power of collaboration and determination. Beyond physical challenges, emotional growth played a central role in the family's life. Each sister had moments of doubt, but over time, they discovered the value of open communication and mutual support. Marta learned to trust Rosa's intuition and creativity, recognizing that not all solutions required careful planning. Lucia found the courage to express her needs and desires, confident that her voice mattered. Rosa learned the importance of patience and consideration, balancing her energy with empathy for others. Ernesto, in turn, discovered the joy of guiding, mentoring, and supporting a family not by authority alone, but through care and understanding. The family also found joy in shared traditions and celebrations. Birthdays, festivals, and harvest celebrations became occasions for creativity, cooperation, and laughter. Each sister contributed in her own way. Marta ensured the events were organized and smooth. Lucia added thoughtful touches and meaningful gestures, and Rosa infused the celebrations with excitement and fun. Ernesto enjoyed these moments, witnessing the bonds between the sisters deepen and seeing how their unique personalities could complement one another. These celebrations were not just about enjoyment. They were a testament to the growth of their relationships and the strength of their household. As years passed, the ranch flourished under the care of Ernesto and the sisters. The land was productive, the animals were healthy, and the household ran with harmony. More importantly, the relationships they had built were strong and resilient. The initial law that had forced them together had given way to genuine affection, trust, and respect. The sisters were no longer strangers brought together by obligation. They were a family, connected by shared experiences, mutual understanding, and the love that grows from cooperation and care. Ernesto reflected on the journey they had all undertaken. He remembered the early days when the law seemed like a heavy burden, when he had wondered how three very different women could live harmoniously with him. Now, he saw that what had initially seemed like a challenge had become a gift. He had discovered companionship, joy, and fulfillment in ways he had never imagined. The sisters, too, had found a sense of belonging, purpose, and connection that enriched their lives beyond measure. Together, they had created a home filled with warmth, laughter, and shared accomplishment. Even the villagers who had once doubted the arrangement now spoke of the family with admiration. The story of Don Ernesto and the Flores sisters became an example of how cooperation, patience, and understanding could transform lives. People marveled at how the family had turned what seemed like an obligation into a source of happiness and strength. Children admired the harmony they witnessed, learning that differences could be bridged with respect and effort. Neighbors sought advice, inspired by the family's dedication, teamwork, and resilience. The ranch itself had become a reflection of their growth. Each corner of the property bore witness to their hard work and collaboration. The pastures were lush, the crops abundant, and the animals thriving. The house, once a quiet space for a solitary man, now hummed with life and laughter. Gardens bloomed with flowers and vegetables, carefully tended by the sisters. Tools were organized and maintained, reflecting the balance of practicality and creativity that defined the household. The land was no longer just a source of livelihood. It was a living symbol of what they had built together. Through all of this, the bonds between the family members deepened. Marta, Lucia, and Rosa had learned to celebrate each other's strengths, respect differences, and support one another in moments of difficulty. Ernesto had discovered the joy of shared responsibility, the satisfaction of guiding a family with care, and the fulfillment that came from building relationships based on trust and love. Together, they had transformed the unexpected circumstances of the law into a life of meaning, happiness, and connection. In the quiet moments, as the sun set over the fields and the animals settled for the night, Ernesto would often sit on the porch and reflect on the journey. He thought about the law that had brought them together, the challenges they had faced, and the growth they had achieved. He realized that life often presents unexpected twists, but with patience, understanding, and cooperation, even the most surprising circumstances can lead to fulfillment and joy. The sisters, too, would sometimes join him on the porch, sharing stories of the day, dreaming of the future, and appreciating the home they had built together. By the time the story reached this point, it was clear that Don Ernesto and the Flores sisters had created something remarkable. The initial law had sparked their journey, but it was their choices, efforts, and commitment to one another that had shaped their reality. They had faced challenges, overcome difficulties, and celebrated successes. They had built a family not by chance, but through respect, love, and the willingness to grow together. The ranch had become a home, the sisters had become companions and friends, and Ernesto had discovered that true happiness often comes in the most unexpected ways. And so, life on the ranch continued, filled with work, laughter, learning, and connection. Don Ernesto, Marta, Lucia, and Rosa had turned an unusual beginning into a story of unity, resilience, and joy. They had created a life that was rich not just in productivity and success, but in the deeper values of family, friendship, and mutual respect. Theirs was a story of transformation, showing that with patience, empathy, and collaboration, challenges can become opportunities, and unexpected circumstances can lead to happiness beyond imagination.